Spiritual Principles. Rabbi Michael-ben-Pesach, Portnaar. The 26th Spiritual Principle. Upper gives from its thickest kli, and the lower receives into its finest kli. From Part 3 of Tes, Talmud Eser Sfirot. Please review the written materials for the text in Hebrew. The upper gives from its coarsest kli, and the lower must receive in its upper, thinnest kli. The coarsest kli in the higher conforms to the properties of the thinnest kli in the lower. The outermost in the higher becomes the innermost part of the lower. That which is the innermost of the lower becomes external in its relation to what is now received from the higher. Therefore, you need to know that the highest always gives its outermost, coarsest part to the lower. The higher one takes the finest sparks that correspond to its properties, and the coarsest which remain in it then gives to the lower. From Tes, Part 2, Talmud Eser Sfirot. And therefore it is considered here that the light belonging to the lower one is divided into two aspects. The first, there is a small portion of light that it receives from the upper to its innermost, highest kli. This that is in it, and this light that it receives is called or pnimi, which is in the inner part of the kli. And the second aspect is the measure of light relating to this upper step that remains as surrounding light for the lower and cannot be received in the kli due to nonconformity of properties with the higher. And therefore this light shines from afar to the lower and does not descend to the lower, and this light is called or makif. It is called like this because of the fact that it surrounds the lower one, because it shines to him from afar, as it cannot dress in the lower. Therefore, this glow is from afar and diminished. But this distant luminescence of or makif thins the aspect of aviyut, which is in the lower, until it comes into correspondence by its properties with all the aspects that are in the lower to the properties and attributes of the higher. And then the lower is able to receive all the light that the upper wants to give to him. And this is called the surrounding lights. That is, the surrounding lights eventually enter the kli of the lower and dress in the kelim of the lower and become the aspect of or pnimi in the lower, eventually. It is this spiritual principle of interaction of the upper with the lower that is the engine of progress, and not some useless theory of altruistic evolution. There has never been, and there never will be, a real similarity to the theory of evolution, since there is only the nonconformity in properties with the higher, and then the lower one is not able to receive the light. But, or makif, the surrounding light, shines on him and thins his kilim. And no matter how the kli resists, no matter how the person resists his development, he cannot escape from this anywhere. He thereby eventually becomes more and more civilized from the previously being a savage. And then this external civilization penetrates into his heart, and he is corrected. And it is impossible for anyone to avoid this. And this already exists in the light, all progress for the perfection of the lower in the future of his perfected state. It's amazing. In this sense, of course, everything is absolutely predetermined. But a person needs only to agree with this and develop the conformity of properties within himself, and not wait for hits and strikes from or makif striking him with the upper light, which constantly wants to enter the kli of the lower, despite the resistance of the person. And no one can get away from this. Therefore, it is wiser to joyfully agree. So the Or Makif, which shines and thins the Kilim, enters there, and the surrounding light, Or Makif, becomes Or Pnimi. The whole point of progress and advancement lies precisely in this. There is nothing else anymore. This is the motor, the driving force of all progress, and the whole correction of man and humanity. You just have to accept these laws, and then you can move forward. Each creation has internal and external kilim. For the internal kilim, the one who is more external is the coarser, worsened. Why is this so? Take 3 kilim, Keter, Hokmah, Binah. In relation to the inner light, who is more important? Who is bigger? Who is stronger? Who attracts more light? The inner kilim, where the Or Pnimi enters, the kli, which has a greater aviyut, the thickness of desire, is greater. With the masach, also, together with the masach, that is the one that attracts the more light. So again, the inner kilim, where the Or Pnimi enters, the kli, which has a greater aviyut, which is the thickness of desire, with the masach, that is the one that attracts the more or the most light. And the opposite applies for the external kilim. Why? The surrounding lights are just the opposite. This is a very important principle. The kli, which is thinner, is the more important. Therefore, a higher light can enter into it. This principle is also very important because it indicates that there is a constant impact of Or Makif, surrounding light, and the Or Pnimi, inner light, impacting one another, for they are completely opposite in nature. It is very important that I try to explain. They have been studying Kabbalah there for 20, 30 years in their academy, and no one really understands this, although they read and will read until their hair grows gray, and they still will not understand anything. What does Or Makif do? It tries to knock out the strongest aviyut. Therefore, the thinning of the masach from the body is always caused by Or Makif. Whenever the masach becomes thinner and tries or rises to the peh, the mouth of the partsuf, the roughest level with the largest aviyut that caused the biggest light, no longer enters this partsuf because it is knocked out by Or Makif. For example, in Galgalta, Adam Kadmon, the light passed to the tabur. And now there is a restriction, and there are places where the light has entered from the peh to the tabur, and this is an inner light, or pnimi. And then the measure of the light that entered there is determined, the measure of the light that remains, as the surrounding light. So the light of Or Makif beats precisely in the place to which Or Pnimi has reached. And Or Makif thins this place because by its nature it requires the most subtle and thinnest kli. And Or Pnimi is the opposite. The rougher the kli with the greater masach, the greater the light will enter there. And this is a very important principle. Therefore, everything works exactly the same with us. If I work spiritually and improve myself, then my next state cannot be worse than it used to be. But on the contrary, it is always better. And why does this happen? Because Or Makif knocks out the previous state, which I built the last time, in which I was able to make the strongest Or Pnimi. And for example, the inner kilim must be the roughest. The coarsest kli with the greatest masach, it attracts the greatest light. Therefore, in the inner kilim, the principle is applicable. The one who is rougher is the one who receives, is the one who attracts the greatest light. And for the external kilim, on the contrary, those who are thinner are the higher. And you need to know that in the spiritual there are two things. That the higher is not the one who has the coarsest kilim with a larger masach. This is only from one aspect. As now you already know that this is only true from the perspective of the inner kilim. And now we have 3 common kilim, which include 5 particular ones within them. And 2 kilim come out from the step of the general aspect of the partsuf. But in the particular aspect of the partsuf, there are always 5 inner kilim and 5 lights. It turns out that there are 5 lights of Or Pnimi and 2 lights of Or Makif. As it turns out, it's not enough to only have Or Pnimi, even when all the lights of Naran Chai enter into it. You also need for Malchut to rise up at least twice. First up to Ze'ah, Zeir Anpin, and then to Binah. And then she will receive two surrounding lights, Or Makif, Haya, and Or Makif, Yehidah. Why is this required? Because then you have everything, all internal kilim with all the lights and external kilim, into which Or Makif shines at a distance. It is important to know that in individual spiritual work, one must pay attention not only to the inner kilim, but also to the outer ones. I emphasize it so greatly that you understand this well, and affix it within yourself. This principle, as it were, is contradictory because the natures of these two lights are opposite each other, the Or Pnimi and Or Makif. And now we see the same thing in the Kilim, and the inner and outer Kilim express the same contradiction, the same opposing principle.